Now, we all know that video games have the capabilities of scaring us to our very core from time to time, but most of these examples can be found obviously in the horror genre. Yet the examples we're talking about today, well, they'll chill you to the core and you will not see them coming. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 unexpected times video games creeped you out. Number 10. Final Fantasy VII Seeing Sephiroth's Power. Even far removed from that one moment that everybody knows, the original Final Fantasy VII was a master of controlling the player's emotions. Now, most of the times it did this involving one of two things: the betrayal of a certain party member, and of course the second being Sephiroth. Now, there's a brilliant moment in the town of Nibelheim later on, which could count as a horror section, but you know what, that's not what we're looking at here. Because early on, you actually play alongside Sephiroth in a flashback, using way more powerful versions of spells than you have access to in order to wreck an imposing enemy. A little after that, you spend a good portion of the game following him across the world, only to find out that you're just behind him and arriving in time to see the aftermath of his actions. Now, at one point, after using a chocobo to cross a small section safely, where we'd otherwise have to battle a really tough snake boss, we find that Sephiroth has used a tree to spear its corpse in a terrifying monument to his power. And at that moment, you feel like somebody's stepping over your grave, because the shivers, they are real, my friend. Number 9. POKÉMON Lavender Town. Now, Pokemon, by its nature, isn't really that scary. I mean, sure, children are sent out into the wilderness to make their pet monsters beat each other up until they pass out, and then digitize those monsters and keep their engrams in a ball, recalling them when they wish to use their newly conquered slaves to beat up even wilder monsters. Yeah, actually, it is pretty weird when you think about it. And sure, merely passing into the eye line of most people in this world will mean that they rush forward and then start attacking you with their own collection of Pokemon. Actually, you know what? Pokemon is terrifying. I retract my original statement. But it's not like really scary. Not like the best horror games out there, right? Well, that changes the moment you enter Lavender Town. Itself a graveyard filled with the tombs of thousands of deceased Pokemon, the village is haunted by plenty of ghost types, as well as some pretty eerie characters who live there. But even that doesn't really make the place scary. But you know what makes it truly scary? The bloody music. Listed by many as the scariest video game music ever, Lavender Town's theme is a mismatched collection of calming tones which is torn asunder by jarring chords that truly haunt the very soul. Number 8. Dark Souls Mimics. Now here's the question, is Dark Souls a horror game? It's kind of like dark fantasy, really, but there's certainly enough in the lore and the creature design that could definitely qualify it as a horror. And that is never more evident than when you meet the mimics for the first time. Now, mimics have been in games for years, creatures that either look like or live inside chests that you open, causing them to burst out and try to eat you. It's an already horrifying experience for sure, but Dark Souls takes it to the extremes by having the mimics become body horror-like creatures with gangling limbs and lolling tongues that fall out of a chest that is lined with razor-sharp teeth. And that's without mentioning the chilling laugh. A helm found later in the game gives players the same head and has the following item description. Monster head resembling a treasure chest. Once an ancient god, it is said that this is a symbol of shame imposed on a long-lost clan exiled for the sin of avarice. And then you realize that these creatures were once men, now cursed to this horrifying existence by their greed, which makes it somehow even more terrifying. So yeah, when in doubt, just smash that chest. Number 7. Fallout 3 Andale. For a game that isn't really a horror game, Fallout 3 sure does have a lot of horrific locations, mostly those hit by super mutants or raiders, but one of my personal favourites is Vault 108. Which now only has one resident and a cloning machine. Cloning himself repeatedly, Gary soon found that several generations of clones got mentally weaker over time, eventually only speaking the word Gary in different tones. Now, portrayed in the game as hilarious, this tale of loneliness and slowly encroaching madness is definitely chilling, and downright hilariously so when being chased by somebody saying, "Ha ha ha ha, Gary!" But you know what? It's the peaceful town of Andale that holds true horror for players. Seemingly holding onto their pre-war stylings, Andale seems to be the cradle of civilization in an otherwise untamed land. Right up until the moment that you pick the lock to their basements and start to understand what they're doing to survive. Twisting their faith to incorporate cannibalism, the founding families prey on unwary travelers, taking them below the pristine streets to their personal slaughter chambers, where they're butchered and then served up as the latest meal to the people that are still living the American dream. Number 6. Arkham Asylum, The Scarecrow. Now, Batman may be a billionaire detective and technological genius, with more training than you can shake a particularly combat-orientated open university syllabus at, but he's still just a single man. In Batman Arkham Asylum, he's facing off against such a large enemy of goons and supervillains that a lot of areas are split between two types of gameplay. One where you get to use one of the most elegant combat systems designed, and the other seeing you move stealthily through the shadows to take out goons left, right, and center. But none of this matters a jot when you go up against the Scarecrow. Jonathan Crane's use of hallucinogenic compounds leaves Bruce battling through his own mind, warped by the fear gas that he's developed. Turning into a stealth horror, Batman is suddenly as weak as the child who once fell to his knees beside his dead parents in Crime Alley, and we even get to see that play out. Hiding from a gigantic version of the Scarecrow who searches for Bruce, gameplay takes place in metaphor as Batman must avoid his fears whilst gathering strength to face them. Number 5. Majora's Mask, The Moon. Now, players usually know what to expect when playing a Legend of Zelda title. There will be a kid who at some point puts on a green tunic, he'll use his sword amongst other items, and he'll make his way around the world to battle giant evil. He'll meet many races and somehow be the key to the problems that they're currently dealing with. There'll be temples and possibly a princess, I'm not sure what her name is actually come to think of it, who needs rescuing. So when Ocarina of Time presented those very elements in the first foray into 3D gaming, fans felt right at home. And when the direct sequel showed up following Link from the end of that game, they thought they knew what to expect, but Majora's Mask was not what fans expected at all. Now, a lot of the elements are there, but this is a darker Zelda set during a time loop that continually sees the moon crashing into the planet and wiping out all of life. And while the player does very much the same stuff that they'll do in any Zelda game, simply looking up will show them that moon in the sky inching ever closer to the fate that they're trying to avoid. Oh, and of course, it's got a face, and that face is terrifying. Number 4. Sonic the Hedgehog Drowning Music. Now, lots of games have had swimming sections over the years, and a lot of these have allowed the character to go under the water. In fact, this was actually more prevalent before the advent of 3D, where 2D games could just simply add an easy swimming section that sees you realistically collecting bubbles so that you don't drown, making your way through the flooded underground cave system that every video game apparently had. In the Sonic the Hedgehog games, though, the addition of what we're terming drowning music adds so much tension that a surprisingly large number of players simply cannot bring themselves to play these sections without feeling like they're the ones drowning. A rising tide of dread covers them as surely as the water has covered their titular blue hedgehog, and they slowly work their way through the caves. The music rises as their air gets lower, and the panic might mean that they miss that next air bubble. It gets louder and louder, muffled only by their own rising heartbeat, and at this point we have to remind ourselves that despite all of this horror, this is meant to be a kid's game. Number 3. Gregory Horror Show Guest Chases. Now do me a favour, and if you've never heard of the Gregory Horror Show, open a new tab for a moment and look it up. This early example of cube art graphics doesn't look as much like a horror game as the title suggests, does it? The PS2 game casts you as an amnesiac and one of the latest guests at Gregory's house. After meeting death in a dream, you find that you're trapped in the hotel and must collect 12 souls in order to escape. Luckily, all those souls are currently kept in bottles by other guests. The player then has to wander the hotel, watching other cube art guests as they go about their daily routines, spying on them through keyholes and hiding from them until they find a way to steal the soul. Once a guest has their soul stolen, they'll start to attack the player whenever they see them in an attempt to reclaim their soul. And it's in these moments that the game goes from a cutesy voyeur em up to full panic-inducing, Outlast-inspiring chases from relentless monsters who all move much faster than the player. It is terrifying. Number 2. Mass Effect: The Husks. When players first loaded up Mass Effect, they knew that they had a huge space adventure ahead of them, something akin to Star Trek or Battlestar Galactica, but with them at the forefront. That becomes clear from the moment that players first land on Eden Prime and take their team through the area, clearing away hordes of hostile robotic Geth. But what they don't know at the time is that the Geth are actually working for the Reapers, who they've taken to worshipping as gods because they are the most advanced artificial intelligence in the known universe. The Geth have been given Reaper technology while they do their bidding, and one such piece of technology is the so-called Dragon's Teeth, 10-foot spikes on which residents of the colony were placed. At first, these seem like just unnecessary moments of cruelty to hit home just how bad these robot menaces are. Then the poles drop as you approach, and the true horror hits home. The colonists have been changed by these towers and have been turned into abominations that are now charging right towards you. It is a horrifying moment that only gets worse as you learn more about the Reapers. And number 1, Thief 3, Shale Bridge Cradle. 2004's The Three Deadly Shadows is an open-world steampunk game in which you play a thief, who would have guessed, burgling several places in order to collect as much loot as possible while following a storyline loosely interwoven around these locations. It's a fun game to play from the shadows, firing water arrows to put out lanterns and candles, taking out guards, hiding them, and then relighting the candles so nobody even suspects that you were there. In the penultimate mission of the game, though, you're tasked with navigating the Shale Bridge Cradle, which may well be one of the most terrifying places created for any video game. Never mind one that actually isn't focused on horror at all. Once an orphanage and at different times a mental institution, the Cradle is not only haunted but also very much alive. Tied to the legend of the Grey Lady, a supernatural murderer, the Cradle remembers those who die within its walls, jealously holding onto them and refusing their escape to the afterlife. Recreating their bodies as puppets to do malevolent bidding, the building hides its secrets well and forces the player to go into the unknown just to figure out what the hell is going on. But one thing that we do know is that it is pure terror in video game form. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 unexpected times video games creeped you out. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice, where I do all of my streaming outside of work, and it'd be great to see you over there. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Hope you're treating yourself with love and respect, my friend, because you deserve all the best things in life, and do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise, alright? You're a massive ledge, and I want you to go out there and truly smash it today. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.